On Thursday, October 31st, 1996, at São Paulo's Congonhas Airport, a routine flight was about to take a tragic turn. The flight, designated Papa Tango, Mike Romeo Kilo, was a Fokker 100 operated by TAN. What was expected to be a short trip would end in just 59 seconds. On that fateful morning, I lived near Interlagos. I vividly remember seeing on the news that an airplane belonging to TAN had crashed shortly after takeoff. Panic set in as I rushed to find a public phone to check on my family. My brother-in-law often flew with TAN, but thankfully he was not on board that day. What could have caused an aircraft to plummet just after takeoff? Let's break down the events of that day. The Fokker 100, painted in dark blue with the number 1 emblazoned on its fuselage, taxied to runway 17R. It was 8:20 a.m. on Halloween, a day that would soon be etched in the memories of many. The number 1 was a tribute to TAN's recognition as the best regional airline in the world, awarded just the previous year. As the aircraft lined up on the runway, the experienced Captain José Antonio Moreno, aged 35 with 9,000 flight hours, was at the controls, assisted by 27-year-old co-pilot Ricardo Luis Gómez Martins, who had flown 4,000 hours. During their pre-flight briefing, they were informed of issues with the auto-throttle system. But crucially, they were not informed about the right engine reverse thrust, which had shown a warning since the previous landing. As they taxied to the runway, an alarm briefly sounded in the cockpit but went unnoticed by the crew. This alarm indicated that the reverse thrust was not locked, a potentially critical issue. The flight was filled with executives from several major banks heading to Rio de Janeiro. As they prepared for takeoff, the tower cleared them for departure at 8:26 a.m. This was the moment that would lead to catastrophe. At 8:26 and 2 seconds, the co-pilot initiated the takeoff sequence. The captain called for toga, activating the automatic throttle for takeoff power. By the time they reached 80 knots, alarms indicated that the auto-throttle was inoperative. Despite the alarms, they proceeded with takeoff, as this situation was still considered manageable. Just seconds after liftoff, the crew was alerted to a serious problem. The right engine suffered a sudden loss of power due to the opening of the reverse thrust, a situation they were unprepared for. Without visible warnings, the aircraft began to veer off course. Realizing the aircraft was drifting, the captain attempted to correct the trajectory. However, due to the sudden loss of thrust, the Fokker began to pitch sharply to the right, and the takeoff quickly turned disastrous. At just 39 meters above the ground, the plane was in serious trouble. The right engine was essentially braking, while the left engine was accelerating. The aircraft began to bank steeply, and despite the crew's efforts to stabilize it, the situation worsened. As the aircraft struggled to gain altitude, alarms blared in the cockpit. The captain and co-pilot, overwhelmed by the unfolding crisis, were unable to regain control. At 56 seconds after takeoff, the ground proximity warning system alarm sounded, warning them not to descend. Tragically, just 5 seconds later, the Fokker 100 crashed into a residential area in the Jabaquara neighborhood, approximately 2 kilometers from the airport. The impact resulted in the tragic loss of 6 crew members, 89 passengers, and 4 individuals on the ground. In the aftermath of the crash, chaos erupted. The explosion and the fuel that poured from the aircraft created a fire that engulfed the street for over 200 meters. Emergency services scrambled to respond, but the scene was chaotic, with no clear coordination and many lives hanging in the balance. Fernando Pamplona, a seasoned pilot with 35 years of experience, shared his memories of Captain Moreno. He recounted a harrowing incident they faced together early in their careers, highlighting Moreno's calmness under pressure. On another significant occasion, Moreno was present at the hospital during the birth of Pamplona's second child, reflecting the deep bond they shared. How could such a catastrophic failure occur? To understand this, we must look back 6 years to when Fokker modified the reverse thrust system to conserve battery power during flight. Prior to this change, the system was designed to maintain the reverse thrust actuators in a locked position. However, the modification altered this configuration, leading to a significant increase in the failure rate of the system. Following the accident, the chaos extended beyond the crash site. Authorities struggled to manage the aftermath effectively. The media coverage sparked public outrage, with many speculating about the heroic actions of the pilot. despite the reality of the situation. In the wake of the tragedy, the investigation revealed a lack of proper coordination among emergency responders. The Brazilian Air Force's investigation body, CENIPA, faced immense pressure to release a report quickly, a process that typically takes much longer. Families of the victims were left in limbo, unable to seek justice or closure. They faced a painful decision: accept settlements from TAN or wait for the investigation to conclude. The accident served as a painful lesson for society about the complexities of aviation investigations. The fallout was so severe that local government officials faced backlash for their insensitivity in notifying residents to repair their homes or face fines. As we reflect on this tragic event, it's essential to acknowledge the multiple factors that contributed to the crash. Psychological pressures on the pilots, insufficient information, and the aircraft's mechanical deficiencies all played a role in the disaster. The final report made several recommendations to improve safety measures within the aviation industry. It emphasized that pilots should not take corrective actions below 400 feet during critical phases of flight. The report also called for significant improvements in training procedures, emphasizing the need for better communication and coordination among crew members. In the end, the Fokker 100 returned to the skies after necessary modifications were made to restore its safety standards. The tragedy of the flight that day remains a somber reminder of the importance of vigilance, preparation, and the profound impact of aviation safety regulations. This story, while tragic, serves as a crucial lesson in understanding the complexities of aviation safety and the human factors that can lead to disaster. Thank you for joining us as we delve into the events of that fateful day in Brazilian aviation history.